Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 7 from the 2013 World Chess Championship match between Anand and Carlsen. Going into this round, Carlsen has a 4-2 lead over Anand, and Anand with the white pieces in this one opens with e4. We have seen this in every game by Anand when he has the white pieces. We have yet to deviate from the e4 start. And we follow Game 6 up until this point right here, where instead of c3, the game 6 move, we have the bishop capturing the knight, giving up the bishop pair in exchange for damaging black's structure. Following up knight d2, black pins the knight, a question is thrown to the bishop, that pin is maintained, and now we don't go forward with this approach to break the pin, but rather to challenge the bishop by way of knight g3. Knight d7 is a quite common maneuver on the black end with this structure, where he pivots on d7 to watch over e5, and will one day maybe like to get to the e6 square by way of f8 or even c5. So, following up, being quite consistent, knight g3, black gives up the bishop pair, and, well, the other consideration was to drop back here, but black simply captures, simplifies the position more, and now tries to show that the knight on g3 is going to be inconvenienced. With the g6 now around the knight, it's tough to get him working, and I'm not so sure where the perfect home would be for this knight. So, bishop e3, getting all the pieces working, both sides now queenside castled, not entering a position where we have some race against one another's king. If there were opposite sides castling, that's what we would like to do. Not the case here. The knight gets working, he was doing nothing on g3, and with rook to e8, this is aimed at preventing d4. If this was even a thought by white, it's certainly now going to be a bad one. e4 would then fall. So we wouldn't have d4. First, king b1, quite common when you queenside castle. Get that king over a little bit more to watch over those pawns on a2 or a7. b6 is there. Black king gets ready to tuck himself in on b7. And here comes h4, which is intending h5 and the opening of the h-file for this rook. King b7 was played pretty quick. The other thought was to just stop this idea altogether with h5, and I'm not so sure why that move wasn't played. But king b7, certainly not a bad move, of course. And this particular structure, keep in mind, on the black side, the pawns on b6, c6, and c7, they act as very good defense to any queen checks if we were to get into queen versus queen endgame, or really just for as long as the queens are on the board. c7 pawn is around to negate any rank checks, the b pawn, of course, for file checks, and now this doubled pawn serves a good role in stopping any diagonal checks. So a nice little pocket, a nice home for the king in order to avoid any perpetual checks. It's not so easy on the white side. If there's ever some pawn move, there's maybe one day a way a queen could be making use of the f1 and c4 squares to be giving check, whether he's on b1 or a2. Anyhow, we don't really get to see that in this game, but just take note of that defensive structure on the black side. h5 comes, dark square bishops come off, and this is where we can really have the last real structural change in the game. Was the queen was recapturing, but if the pawn takes, now this file is opened up, and, well, how will black cope with some pressure against the f-pawn? Let's make a semi-passing move, a5. I think that there could always be, you could defend with the rook, but I believe maybe even keeping the pawn on f6, and with this knight here, I don't know how much more you can break down this structure here on the black side. It was another approach that white could have taken, but instead it was keeping the structure as is, taking with the queen. The knight posts up on c5, e6, maybe even knight a4 with queen b4, ideas of putting pressure on b2 or maybe around the corner. The h-file is now opened, and with g3, this is a tell that f4 is going to be played next, or sometime very, very soon, so that if there is a capture, white is able to recapture with the pawn. We have a5 looking at maybe disrupting the white kingside structure. b3, you would need to be very careful about playing this move because of black's reply a4. If a black pawn is allowed on a3, that's going to be very troublesome to the white king, taking away his flight square. Maybe one day the queen could get there and cause white a giant headache. So we don't have b3. You get active. The rook had complete control over the h-file, so the next thing to look to do is how exactly to function laterally. Not really a more active square for that rook than h7. That is challenged right away. Pair of rooks comes off, and the pressure is going to now be alleviated from f7 by first playing queen f6, stopping additional pressure against that point and preparing to exchange off an inactive rook for a very active one with rook to h8. So f4 is played, rook h8 is there, and we have the rooks coming off right away. And keep in mind there is no in-between capture on this square with, let's say, even some follow-up like this. That's not working out because keep in mind after this capture there is a queen check, and then you are losing the rook. So this needed to be calculated from this point here, anticipating f4, knowing that when you play here and after this capture, pawn takes here, recapture, these moves were all played in the game. You needed to know as black how to respond after d4. You needed to see all of that and know that there is a way out of the tactic because there are unprotected pieces. Unprotected pieces lead to tactics and lead to ways out of tactics as well. Queen takes here, there's no time to take the knight, the queen is hit. Queen takes queen, knight takes queen. Black would be up a pawn. So we wouldn't have that. We do have, however, this position springing about in the game where the queen recaptures on e5 and the follow-up queen f3, pressure on f7, f5 is there. We have these pawns exchanged and not really much going on at this point. c3 at this point, looking to get the king into c2. One point I can make is instead of f5, I had thought during the game, what should white do if knight a4 converging on b2? Well, you do need to be a little bit careful. If d4, this is a bad move due to queen b5. This pawn is still being hit, as well as the knight. Mate could be defended with b3, but this is losing as a result of queen takes knight, followed up with a fork. So that wouldn't be the defense. What would, if knight a4 were played on this move 26, well, you'd play c3. And if the queen is coming over here, you would have b3. The c3 point is covered. If the knight plays here, king c2 would be played. Every base point is covered. Now this queen is a bit offside. f7 is still hit, and this knight is ready to jump into the center and kick the queen back. So this is not a road to go down for black. So we didn't have knight to a4. Instead it was f5. Pawns are exchanged. c3 is there. The king is ready to contribute. Knight e6. These knights are basically offsetting one another. These squares being covered. d4 and f4. King c2. Knight g5. Queen f2. And what we end up having is something that is quite similar to games 1 and 2 of this match. This game is this position is dead equal, and we just witnessed another threefold repetition. This game 7 ending as a draw. And with that, the match now, Carlsen having 4.5 points to Anand's 2.5 points, and we take things into round 8 where Carlsen will have the white pieces. So we will see what takes place at that point, and I look forward to it as usual. So that's all for this video. Take care.